What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Librarians of Solana podcast. My name is T, and I am one of the librarians here in Solana in the world of Wraith. On today's episode, we're going to go over last weekend's ProQuest results, as well as a little bit of upcoming speculation. Not so much news as it is speculation. So yeah, let's jump right into the news/speculation section. We don't really have any special announcements from FabTCG, from LSS about any upcoming events. We have confirmation from Star City Games that SCG CON Fort Worth is going to have a battle hardened event. That is April 8th through 10th is the weekend of that SCG CON. So be sure to head over to scgcon.starcitygames.com so that you can check out the full details on that event. But it is similar to the previous battle hardened event that they had at SCG CON Philadelphia. And then we have another kind of announcement. This is the speculation part. The other one is like really an announcement with news. This one is a speculation though. If you go to that website, there is a new tab for SCG CON Pittsburgh, which is marked for April 29th through May 1st. And I'm looking at it right now on my other monitor. I can see it. It's SCG CON Pittsburgh for April 29th through May 1st. And it does have the Flesh and Blood logo on it. So this could be a calling. This could be a battle hardened. It could just be side events. We don't know for sure. But that leaves us some room for some speculation about what that weekend might be. So hopefully a calling or something like that. Some more Northeast events would be nice. That's especially local to me in my area, and we've got a pretty good area down here. Pretty good group of players in this area. So yeah, I'm excited to see if that ends up being a bigger event, or even if it's just a battle hardened, I'd be happy with that too. It's good to see companies like Star City and Channel Fireball picking up these events because it's really growing the game. And regardless of some of the bad publicity stuff that happens, like the box breaks at CFB, the game is still growing despite anything that people will tell you online. And it's not just like a collector's game. People actually play this game, and the turnouts for these events are massive, and it's incredible to see. So I'm glad to see the game being picked up and more tournaments happening, and I'm excited to see where the growth of the game goes for the future. But with that being said, that is all the news we have for today. I do want to talk about. Wow, that one's white. I do want to talk about the results from some of the ProQuests that I went to this past weekend. I played something pretty non-traditional and did reasonably well with it. So I played in Classic Constructed Oldhim, Grandfather of Eternity, aka Time Daddy Grandfather Mountain Man. But I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my interactions that I had, some of my matchups, and then what happened, why I didn't take it down, you know? So the first one that I went to was Saturday. It was at Star City Games. It was my local game store's ProQuest. And I went 6-0 through Swiss. The only one that I was like maybe not winning, which I was pretty much winning it. I got paired round 2 against one of my friends. They were playing Prism Aura. And I had them not so low on life total. They were at mid-20s, I believe. And I was somewhere around the same, but they had 4 cards left in their deck. I did a very good job of controlling the game state and breaking Spectras as soon as I could. And then applying pressure with go again things like Zealous Belting and Enlightened Strike in order to be able to break Spectral Shields in addition to just the Spectra auras. So we went to time, where we almost went to time. There was about 30 seconds left on the clock, and to make sure that we didn't draw, they conceded. Like, hey, I'm going to concede DUT. Like, thank you, I appreciate it, because it was super stressful. That matchup is the hardest matchup for Oldhim. And if you do take that matchup, it takes like an hour and a half. It is the longest matchup and the hardest matchup to actually make work and make it into a win. It's not impossible. It is just the most challenging. You have to have things line up. You have to have a few things go wrong for them. And you have to be able to apply constant pressure and prioritize the right auras. So at SCG, like I said, I went 6-0 through Swiss, and then in the first round of top 8, I died to someone playing Dash Control. Pretty ironic. They were playing Very similar to my dash control list that I did on the deck tech with Arsenal Pass. If you haven't checked that out yet, I would highly recommend. I will leave a link for that in the description below to my dash control deck tech that I did with Brandon Patrick on Arsenal Pass. Definitely give it a listen, give it a watch. I think that dash control deck has some potential because it's got pretty good matchup into a few of the things in the meta right now. But this Oldhim list was very interesting. I did die to that dash control deck because it's designed to beat Guardians. It just farms Guardians. I think I misplayed the game a little bit as well. I should have applied more pressure into the early game. I only had him to 20, and he assembled the full sweep of items, so I was pretty dead. I was still at 40, but I think the biggest mistake that I made was not taking enough damage in the early game and subsiding a little bit of the pressure that I could have applied to preserve my life total. I probably should have let early pistol shots through in order to send out bigger attacks and like set up pummels and stuff like that. But I just didn't, and I think that was absolutely wrong. It set me behind for the late game and allowed him to set up a bunch of items. I was trying to do like ice reacts to get rid of his hand, just in case he was going to finish off with items and stuff. And it didn't really matter because then he just set up more on the following turns. So it was probably incorrect to play the matchup the way I did. I just did not anticipate him to be control whenever we first sat down. I expected him to play more of a mid-range game plan because that's more typical of what you see running around. And I was not even prepared for my own deck list, which is kind of funny. If I had gotten through that one, I think I could have taken down the rest of the top 8 because the finals ended up being my friend that conceded to me in round 2, which I had a pretty good matchup against, and then a Viserai player who I demolished in the final round of Swiss. Yeah, them's the beats. So we ran it back the next day on Sunday. I drove 3.5 hours to get to another ProQuest, and at that one I went 4-2 in the Swiss. I lost round 2 to a Viserai player. He went full OTK against me and hit a lot of early setup. He just basically took everything that I dealt at him to keep applying pressure, and even with like pummels and E-strikes and everything on my end, he was able... I only got him to 5. He was at 5 when he comboed off, and he had 28 rune chance. So I was very, 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 very dead. And yeah, he had like an even split whenever he went off on the Sonata, and it was just game over from there. He hit like... Let's see, 28 rune chance, 14 is 17. Yeah, he could have hit maximum of 8. I'm pretty sure he hit 6 or 7 cards. He had a couple of defense reacts that stopped him from getting like a full sweep, but even then it was still just a lot of cards. He hit all 3 red meet and greets and just kind of rolled me. But that happens sometimes if you can't apply enough pressure. So that loss came in round 2, and then I obviously won round 1 against that one was against a Rhinar. It was super interesting. I've never tested that matchup before with Oldhim into Rhinar. I only won that matchup. He was attacking for lethal, and I couldn't do anything about it because he intimidated me a bunch. I won that matchup because I fatigued him well enough that he only had 3 cards left in his deck. Or he had 4 cards left in his deck, but he plays Sand Sketch Plan to go and search for an attack from his deck that had 6 power. And then when he shuffles his hand and lays it out and we decide what he's discarding, he ends up discarding a Beast Within, and he's at 3, and he has 3 cards left in his deck, and we flip them all over, and it was Energy Potion, Sink Below. So he died to his own Beast Within trigger as he was like presenting lethal on an attack, essentially. So that one was kind of rough, but I think that one is a little bit on deck building and a little bit on not playing into the fatigue plan well enough. I think if you're playing into control matchups with something like Rhinar or Levia, you do kind of just have to roll Scabskins and hope it works out sometimes on turns where you're not using Barraging Beatdown or Blood Rush Bellow. Because against aggro decks, you can't afford to lose the tempo, but against a control deck, sometimes the worst thing that happens is they just attack you with Hammer, especially a deck like Oldhim. I require a lot of setup, so the worst thing that happens is you take 8 off a Cranial Crush, or you take 8 from a Macho Grand, or you just like take a Frosty Hammer. So it's the downside is not that bad if you roll a 1. Plus you've got Gambler's Gloves if you do it on a turn that matters. So there's pretty much all upside into playing against control and rolling your Scabskins if you can make use of it. But it's the aggro matchups where you have to be careful not to lose your tempo and just let them come at you with a big swing. that is like way more than you can deal with. And then my last loss was the final round of Swiss. I played against a Prism player who was undefeated, and they defeated me. So they went 6-0 in the Swiss. I made it in at, I believe, 6th seat. They were playing Prism Aura, and they just played it in a way that was phenomenal. They timed things well. I did not hit enough of my go-agains, so I was not able to deal with Spectral Shields. And it showed why the matchup is tough. Yeah, I just got rolled. There's not much to say about it. They handily defeated me. So I made it in at 6th seat of the top 8. I got paired against Aura Prism. We got deck checked for the top 8. My opponent had an error where they registered the card Shimmers of Silver wrong. I don't know what the error was. I just overheard the judge say issue Shimmers of Silver. And I didn't ask my opponent because they were getting a penalty, so I didn't want to like tilt them off the planet by like, hey, what'd you do wrong? You know, it's kind of rude. So we played the game. They started with an IP2 and they were going first. So technically you get it for 3 turns. It was the first turn and the next 2. It didn't even matter though, because they still defeated me. I mis-sideboarded and left in all my pummels, and in that matchup you take out pummels for things that pop in case they go for heralds, and you bring in go-against like Zealous Belting. So you're supposed to bring in Command and Conquers, Spinal Crushes, and Zealouses, and I did that, except I also left all the pummels in my deck, so my deck was just massive and full of cards that don't do anything in the matchup, like pummel, which is a little unfortunate, but it didn't matter a whole lot. There were 2 hands where I drew pummels, and I was like, man, if this was any other card in my deck, like if this was a blue, we're chilling here. So it did feel a little bad, but that happens sometimes, and so I got eliminated in that first round of top 8, which the top 4 was then 3 Prisms and a Bravo Star of the Show, and the finals was then 2 Prisms. So I was probably not winning that event. My best shot would have been at Star City with this list. I really enjoyed the Oldhim deck though. It's very interesting, and I got some sweet gear from playing it. I got 2 of the Cold Foil Lexis, 2 Cold Foil Adult Lexi, which is neat. Not going to complain about that. The deck is sweet. It's fun to play. People don't expect it. In some game plans, you just go super aggressive, and they're like, wow, Oldhim is very aggressive. What's going on? Like into Viserai, you just have to play like super aggressive and pummel them and deal a bunch of damage. And people were not ready for that. They were not expecting Oldhim to smack them down. And so it got through a lot. I played against 3 Viserais in the second tournament, and I beat 2 of them that were trying to OTK. I killed one of them with a pummel, so he didn't get to combo off. And then the other one, I was winning so hard that I was still at 40, obviously, because he's OTK. He only had like 18 rune chance, and I made him break his Skelta to block. Like, I didn't even let him combo off. He had to block with his second block on Skelta, which is tough. It's a tough position to put yourself in. So then the next turn, he just like attacked with Birthday Cake and all the rune chance he had built up. And I was like, all right, I'll take it. And then he Rattlebones and played a Swarming, and I was like, oh, I'll take that too. All right, I'm at, what, 10? It was like 10 or something. And then I just attacked back with a Dominate Macho Grand and killed him. Yeah, the deck's super fun. If you're playing in a meta that doesn't have a lot of Prism, I could see Oldhim being a very powerful decision. If you're playing in a meta that has a lot of Prism, I would not recommend it, because that matchup is tough and draining, and you have to play everything correctly, and things have to line up well for you and not well for them. So it can put you in a tough position, that's for sure. If you're interested in a deck tech for this deck, let me know in the comments below. Tell me if you would like to see a full breakdown of the list, if you would like to see a sideboard guide. Definitely something that I'd be happy to put together, and I think this deck is sweet and has some potential. So let me know if that's something you're interested in. Oh, hey, checking out? Awesome. That'll be due back next Thursday. I'll see you there.